There's this moment, and maybe you've had it, or maybe you're somewhere in the middle of building toward it, where you're sitting down to pay your rent or your mortgage, and you feel that familiar dull weight settle in your chest. It doesn't matter if you're making decent money. It doesn't matter if you've got a stable job and a full pantry and everything looks fine from the outside. There's still this quiet, exhausting awareness that the rent is coming out of your paycheck, out of your time, out of the 40-something hours you traded last month to be here, alive, in this apartment, in this city, at this particular moment in your life. And I don't know, maybe that used to feel normal. Maybe it still does. But at some point, and I genuinely can't tell you exactly when it happened for me, I started thinking about that equation differently. I'm Josh, and I spend probably too much time thinking about money, wealth psychology, and the weird emotional gap between knowing what you should do financially and actually doing it. And the thing that keeps coming back to me, the thing I keep turning over in my head, is this. What actually changes on the day your investments start covering your rent? Not the math. I don't just mean the math. I mean what actually shifts inside you. What does it feel like? And more importantly, why does nobody prepare you for it? Because I think most personal finance content gets this spectacularly wrong. It treats the milestone as a finish line. You cross it, confetti drops, financial freedom achieved, roll credits. But that's not how it works. That's not even close to how it works. What actually happens is stranger and more interesting, and honestly a little unsettling in a way I want to try to explain. Because if you're working toward this, and I'd bet most of you watching this are in some form, the journey looks different than you think it does, and the arrival feels different too. And I think understanding that in advance might be one of the most practically useful things you can do for your financial life. So let's get into it. Okay, so first things first. Let's talk about what we're actually describing when we say investments paying rent. Because depending on where you are financially, this concept can feel either very concrete or completely abstract. What we mean, basically, is passive income from your portfolio, dividends, interest, distributions, rental income, reaching a level that covers your housing costs. For a lot of people, that's somewhere in the range of $1,500 to $3,000 a month, depending on where you live. For others, it's more. The exact number matters less than the principle. Your money is now doing enough work, on its own, to handle your single biggest monthly expense. The math to get there, if we're talking about a dividend-focused approach, for example, isn't as brutal as people assume. If you're targeting $2,000 a month from a portfolio yielding around 4%, you need roughly $600,000 invested. That sounds like a lot, and it is. But it's a different kind of number than most people let themselves imagine. It's not lottery ticket money. It's a number that compound interest can quietly build toward over 15 or 20 years of consistent investing, which is meaningful. But here's the thing that nobody really talks about. When you finally arrive at that number, when you pull up your account in the morning and you can see that last month's dividends actually, genuinely covered your rent, the first thing you feel isn't triumph, it's disbelief. I've talked to enough people who've crossed this threshold to know that the reaction is almost universal. Your brain doesn't accept it. You check the numbers again. You look for the error. You think about how the market could drop 30% tomorrow and suddenly the whole thing would be underwater. You find a dozen reasons to feel exactly as financially anxious as you always have, because your brain has been trained for decades to equate security with earned income. And this passive, quiet, almost invisible income arriving in your account while you slept doesn't feel like something you earned in the same way. It feels, weirdly, like it might not be real. And that psychological hangover from a scarcity mindset? That is the thing nobody prepares you for. Not the math. The math you can model. The mental recalibration required to actually receive and trust passive income. That takes work. Real work. Let me back up a little because I think this is worth sitting with. Most of us grew up with a fundamentally transactional view of money. You work, you get paid, you spend, you repeat. The causality is clean. You can feel it in your body, the effort, the paycheck, the exchange. It makes sense at a cellular level. Even if you hated your job, even if the pay felt unfair, there was a logic to it you could trace with your finger. Passive income breaks that loop, and your nervous system finds it deeply suspicious. There's actually some behavioral economics research on this. The idea that money we feel we haven't earned in a conventional sense gets mentally coded differently. We're more likely to dismiss it, spend it carelessly, or simply not fully register it as part of our financial picture. It's related to what researchers call mental accounting, the way we unconsciously put money into separate buckets based on where it came from and treat each bucket by different rules. So when dividends start rolling in, a lot of people do this thing where they just don't count it, not consciously, but in their day-to-day financial mindset, they're still operating from the earned income framework, still living with the anxiety, still calculating whether they can afford things based purely on their salary. The passive income is there in the account, and they're somehow not letting it work for them psychologically. This is why building toward investment income independence isn't just a financial project. It's a cognitive one. You have to actively, deliberately practice updating your mental model of your own finances. Some people find it helpful to literally track passive income separately, to see it accumulate as its own line item so that the brain can start to encode it as real and stable and significant. Not just a rounding error in your brokerage account. Because here's the thing. The day your investments pay your rent doesn't change your life automatically. You have to decide to let it change your life. And that sounds almost philosophical, but it's actually quite practical. It's about giving yourself permission to make decisions differently. Permission to take a lower-paying job that's more meaningful. Permission to take time off between roles without panicking. Permission to negotiate harder because you don't need this particular opportunity quite as badly as you used to. The financial number is a door, but you have to walk through it, okay? So let's say you've crossed the threshold. Investments are covering rent. You've done the thing. And let's say you've managed the psychological piece. You actually believe it's real, you're letting it inform your decisions. There's still another layer to this, and this one surprised me when I first started thinking about it. Your identity changes, not in a dramatic, overnight way. But slowly, kind of uncomfortably, you start to notice that some of the things you used to say about yourself, I have to work, I can't afford to take that risk, I don't have enough security to do that yet. Those sentences don't quite fit anymore. And sentences that don't fit anymore create a kind of cognitive dissonance. You might even feel weirdly resistant to letting go of them because they've been load-bearing parts of how you understand yourself and your relationship to work and money. I've seen this play out in a kind of interesting way. People who achieve a significant passive income milestone often go through a phase where they actually work harder, not less. It's counterintuitive. But I think what's happening is that their identity was so tied to their earning, to being the person who hustles, who grinds, who earns their keep, that stepping back even slightly feels like a kind of identity death. So they lean into the work even more aggressively as a way of not having to confront the fact that they don't need it quite as much as they used to. Which is fine, honestly. Meaningful work is valuable for its own sake. But I think it's worth being conscious about. Because the freedom that passive income offers is only as real as your willingness to actually use it. Think about it this way. Imagine someone hands you a key to a door. Inside that door is a room with more options, more breathing room, more time. But if you're so habituated to standing in the hallway that you never try the door, the key is just a piece of metal in your pocket. The milestone is only transformative if you engage with what it offers. There's another angle here that I think gets badly underrated in these conversations. And it's not the kind of compounding you're probably thinking about. Yes, compound interest. Yes, reinvested dividends. Yes, time in the market. We know. That's well-covered territory. I'm talking about the compounding of confidence, of optionality, of what happens to your decision-making quality when you're not operating from financial fear. Because financial stress is cognitively expensive. There's a genuinely fascinating body of research, most famously Sendil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir's work on scarcity, that shows how operating under conditions of scarcity, including financial scarcity, meaningfully reduces cognitive capacity. It's not a character flaw. It's not laziness or poor discipline. It's that the mental bandwidth consumed by financial anxiety is bandwidth that isn't available for other kinds of thinking. Creative thinking, strategic thinking, long-term planning, the kind of thinking that, ironically, would help you escape the financial scarcity in the first place. So here's what nobody calculates in their retirement projections or their fire spreadsheets: the productivity gain, the creative output, the career risk-taking, the better negotiations, the businesses started, the opportunities said yes to, the toxic situations walked away from. All of it enabled or at least made significantly easier by the quiet confidence of knowing your rent is covered by something other than tomorrow morning's alarm clock. This is the compounding that changes your life, not just your balance sheet. And it's cumulative in the same way that financial compounding is cumulative. One good decision, made from a place of security rather than fear, leads to another. A job taken because it's meaningful rather than because you desperately needed health insurance leads somewhere different than a job taken from desperation. A conversation had from a place of genuine confidence lands differently. A creative project pursued without the background noise of financial panic produces something different. The number in your portfolio has a leverage effect on everything else, and I think that's both the most important argument for building toward this milestone and the thing that's hardest to put in a spreadsheet. I want to be real with you about something, because I think a lot of financial content either makes this look deceptively simple or deceptively impossible, and both of those failure modes are genuinely unhelpful. The path to having investments cover your rent is not glamorous. It's not a series of brilliant moves. It's largely a series of boring, consistent choices made in environments where the boring, consistent choice is the harder one to make. It looks like not lifestyle inflating aggressively every time your income goes up. It looks like automating your investments so that the decision happens before you can talk yourself out of it. It looks like learning enough about your options that you're not paralyzed by the noise, because there is a lot of noise, but also not chasing every new thing that looks exciting. It looks like leaving money alone for longer than feels comfortable. And it includes, honestly, a fair amount of frustration. Markets drop. Plans feel inadequate. Life gets expensive in ways you didn't anticipate. There will be a year, maybe a few years, where the number in your portfolio goes backwards and you have to hold the strategy anyway. That's just part of it. But I want to come back to something. Because here's what I think is actually the most important practical step you can take, regardless of where you are in this journey. And it's not a specific investment vehicle or a particular savings rate, though those matter too. It's building a clear, vivid mental image of exactly what this milestone will mean for your specific life. Not a generic financial freedom fantasy, but a concrete, personal one. What specifically would you do differently if your rent were covered by your portfolio? What decisions would you make? What would you stop tolerating? What would you start pursuing? Because the research on goal pursuit is consistent on this. Vague aspirations underperform specific, emotionally resonant ones. If financial independence is a blurry idea you hold in the back of your mind, it will lose most of the motivational tug-of-wars it gets into with the much more vivid, immediate pleasure of spending money now. But if you know specifically that you'd leave your current role and spend 2 years building something you actually care about, That's a different kind of gravity. That pulls. So let me circle back to where we started. The day your investments actually pay your rent. What does it feel like? I've thought about this a lot, and I've come to think it feels less like a finish line and more like a tide going out. Slowly, gradually, the financial anxiety that you've been carrying for so long starts to recede, not all at once, not in a single dramatic moment. But over the weeks and months after you cross that threshold, if you let it, if you do the psychological work to accept it and trust it, you notice that you're making decisions differently. Smaller ones, bigger ones. You notice that the Sunday evening dread, that particular flavor of financial existential discomfort, is quieter than it used to be. You notice that you're engaging with your work more genuinely because you're there, because you want to be, not purely because you have to be. You notice that you have opinions about your life that you're actually acting on. And here's the last thing I want to say about this, because I think it's easy to hear all of this and feel like it's very far away, like it's a destination for other people. People who earn more, who started earlier, who made better decisions at 22. And I understand that feeling. I really do. But I want to push back on it gently, because the distance between where you are and where you want to be is almost always more compressible than it looks from the outside. The biggest variable isn't your income. It isn't even your savings rate, though that matters. It's how seriously you decide to take this, how vividly you can imagine it, how consistently you make the boring, unglamorous decision that moves the needle, and then how decisively you act when the number finally arrives. The day your investments pay your rent isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of a different relationship with your time, your choices, and your own sense of what's possible. And that, honestly, is worth building toward. If you found this video informative, comment your thoughts. I read every single one. Like this video, and see you in the next one.